as a cat if I ever thought that, I mean, because that checklist is for a purpose. It's to check to see that you did know what you were doing. You didn't skip anything. You didn't get distracted. And distraction is critical in any business. I mean, sometimes things go so well, you just get distracted by thinking, what could I think up to do? You know, one of our guys, the first time he ever flew one of these fancy all-electric airplanes, came down to the runway. I heard this from a tower controller out in California. Guy comes down, he's brand new on this electrical stuff, and he gets down to the runway, and there's a button that you can push right here and a button on the side of the thrust levers. This one disconnects the automatic throttles. This one gives full power on the airplane. And the guy he was so intense, he got right down close to the runway and he went ding, and hit the wrong one. Full power. Here goes this airplane. And the tower called and said, hey, are you going around? And the guy said, I guess so. I mean, what's he going to do next? I don't know, but don't press enter, it'll do it. The whole idea nowadays is error management. Error management. And here's the concept on error management. The first thing you do is you make plans and you devise and then you engineer systems and philosophies to prevent any accident or incident from ever occurring. So in other words, you figured it out, you've thought it out, you've worked it out, you've engineered it so that no accidents or incidents will occur. So we give you the hardware and the software, and then we've got you, the liveware. But guess what? Sometimes errors are made even with all that engineering and pre-planning. So what we have to do now is capture the error. So this is what you and I have to do. This is how similar our jobs are. The system is there. We know it works. What our task is to be ready to see an error about to begin, to occur, and if one does occur, capture that error. Stop it right now. Otherwise, you begin a chain of events. We call it the safety chain, and some people call it the accident chain. And it's rarely one single little thing that happens that causes an accident or incident. Usually, it's a chain of events, and when we track back in accident reviews, we can find, well, if this person hadn't told this person this, or perhaps if this person should have spoken up, and pretty soon we've got a chain of events that lead to this incident. So it's rarely just an individual thing. It's usually a chain of events. So you and I have to be prepared to capture any error that occurs. What happens if an error gets out of hand? Boy, now you got emergency procedures and memory items and things you have to do. And you're in la-la land out here. You don't ever want to get to that point. You don't want to be up there, in my case, you lose an engine, you lose another engine, now you got 2 out of 4, now you got a cargo fire. I mean, this is not good. So we try to do everything we can to prevent ever getting into that mode. So we're talking error management, and I kind of think of my job as an error manager. I see little errors happen, and I squash them as soon as they happen. We missed something on the checklist. Let's correct that. Bam, do it now. It never bothers me to have a co-pilot, I don't care who they are, it never bothers me to have a co-pilot speak up and say, hey, I think that's the wrong procedure. My ego's not that big anymore. I kind of lost my ego thing. You better tell me. It's your task to tell me. Well, guess what? Then it falls to me. I'm the supervisor, right? I'm the lead. So here's what I have to do with every crew that I fly with. I have to tell them that I expect them. It's not only just okay. I expect them to speak up. It doesn't matter if and I've seen this too. People come from different airlines. They merge airlines. Oh my gosh. Years later, people say, yeah, he was one of those Air California guys. What are you talking about? He's a professional pilot. I don't care where he came from, just does a professional job. So as a supervisor, I have to set up an environment where people feel comfortable speaking to me about questions or problems or concerns. And you've got to get rid of your ego to do that. I kind of think I've done that. In fact, the day I took my dissertation defense to get this PhD thing, this fancy educational deal, I really wanted an HSG, which is high school graduate. But I had to go before these 5 professors at this college, and for 3 hours they grilled me on my research project that I had done. And they said, well, you've dismissed for a few minutes. We're going to vote. One down vote, I'm out of school. I put in a lot of years and work trying to get this thing done. Finally, it seemed like forever. I know it was about 5 minutes. The chief professor came out, and he walked over to me, and he said, congratulations, Dr. Cockrell. Yeah! There's that ego deal again, right? I raced over to the phone. I wanted to call home, hoping to get my mom on the phone. But no. You're getting ahead of me. Yep, it was my father. And he answers the phone and he said, well, what now? I said, you may, from this day forward, address me as Dr. Cockrell. He said, Dr. Bull, well, you know. It's that ego thing. You got to get rid of it. You can't have that in a safety critical environment. You've got to understand that we're all people. We have fallacies and things that are not absolutely perfect all the time, but you have to get that ego out of the way so that everybody can operate safely. If somebody corrects you or calls attention to the fact that some procedure is going wrong, you can never take that as a personal thing. You take that as a professional comment that keeps everybody safe. If you can adapt that attitude, then I think you're really on the road. There were just a couple of other things I wanted to mention. We found in aviation accidents that sometimes pilots tend to display what we call hazardous thought patterns. And I found that it's not only in aviation. I've looked at accidents that have occurred in other areas of the industry and found that sometimes workers display certain hazardous thought patterns. And here's what they are. So you think about these. If you see these attitudes, and by the way, we all do them, but the problem is if you do a lot of them and at the same time, you're really in trouble. Here's these hazardous attitudes. If you see them happening, do something about it. Be an error manager, catch it. Okay? The first one is anti-authority, hazardous thought pattern. That is, don't tell me what to do. I know what I'm doing. See, a person that can never be told what to do really is cruising for trouble. Because not any human ever can get it all, you know. So that anti-authority, don't tell me what to do. I won't go by the regulations. I won't go by the book. I won't go by the standard procedure. I know a better way. That person's going to be trouble. Okay? The second hazardous thought pattern is called the macho hazardous thought pattern. And by the way, this is not gender limited. I've seen some women display this attitude. Okay? It's an attitude of, if it can be done, this one right here can do it. Even if it can't be done, I'm in the top 3 candidates. And if the going gets too tough for everybody else, just call on me, because that's how I like it. Attitude. It's attitude and job performance. Get somebody that's too macho, big problems. Another one, invulnerability. When you don't think it'll ever happen to you, and this is the one that'll get you, this is where complacency comes in. When you think that you are so good, or your system is so good, or your procedures are so good, and your awareness is so good, when you begin to believe that it's never going to happen to you, you better look over your shoulder because it's liable to be right there. I interviewed a pilot one time who had had an accident. He was known to be this macho, ego type guy. And I asked him, I said, have you ever felt invulnerable as a pilot? He said, not anymore. Because that means he used to feel like it'll never happen to him. The reason, he studied harder. He was a very bright individual. He read his manuals all the time. He did all the right things. But it could happen. It could happen to you. So no one is totally invulnerable. We're trying to make ourselves that way. Another one is impulsivity, doing things too quickly without thinking things through. Yes, sometimes you have to make pretty quick decisions. You have to take action. I mean, you can't just say, well, John, I'll tell you what, the right wing is on fire, but you've been working so well, let's kind of think through this deal here while we, no, sometimes you got to do something, sure, but there have been occasions when people reacted too quickly without thinking the problem through and shut down the only operating engine on the airplane, shut down the wrong one. Not good. You could set up now a whole new string of events, safety items, by just pushing one switch the wrong time without thinking things through. So being impulsive can get you in trouble. Finally, there's resignation. Resignation means you have an attitude of, well, why bother? It's either going to happen or it isn't. Why should I do a pre-flight inspection of this aircraft? It flew in here, I'm sure it'll fly out. Why check the fuel? It's either in there or it isn't. You know, it's always worked before, I'm sure it'll work again. That's inappropriate, and it's not safe. And let me tell you how to remember those 5 things, because I could give you a test right this minute, and probably not anybody in here get those 5 things, and I'd have to write them down myself. But let me tell you how to remember those. I started reading years ago American history. Can you imagine that? Yeah, I hated history in school, but now I all of a sudden like it. Well, I was reading about the Sioux and Cheyenne Indians. I wanted to know about their religion and their warrior societies and that sort of thing. And I was really studying this culture, and suddenly I got involved in having to read about another fellow named George A. Custer. And I heard that. Do you think out of those 5 hazardous thought patterns that I just told you about, and if you've never even read a page on George Custer, I bet you can answer this question. Do you think it is possible that on June 25th, 1876, about 55 miles southeast of present-day Billings, Montana, do you think it is possible that George Custer demonstrated any of those 5 hazardous thought patterns every one of them? Let me quickly tell you why that's true. What was the first one? Anti-authority, right? Well, George Custer was Mr. Anti-Authority. In fact, he had been suspended from the Army because he'd been court-martialed for disobeying orders. When he became a general, the youngest general in the history of the United States Army, can you imagine, think back when you were this age, George Custer, Brigadier General, age 23. When he became the boy general, as they called him, he changed his uniform. He made more gold stripes. I've been a great airline pilot. He's supposed to wear the standard uniform, right? He started wearing a red tie instead of a black tie. I mean, he made his own thing. It's anti-authority behavior. Now think about a red tie and a great target. I mean, George Custer, the first man in history to wear an arrow shirt. All right. Anyway,